This is the Dollemore Daily, and I'm Jesse Dollemore. Yesterday, the House Judiciary Committee moved the impeachment inquiry along by holding another scheduled hearing. And really, there is no way to overstate just how much of an embarrassing disaster it was for the Republicans. Really, though, they do have a hell of a tough task. They are endeavoring to defend the indefensible. Republicans would have the American people believe that up is down, hot is cold, or more appropriately, where it relates to these spineless coward Republicans, they would have you believe that dumb is smart. It was a master class in how not to behave when your team is getting buried because you've got no skill, no talent, no intelligence, or no footing in reality. The phrase, fake it till you make it, might possibly be able to be applied here, but I think these clownish goons in the minority party, these Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee, are so feckless that even faking it is too much to ask of them. Let's talk about just how bad it was, though. First of all, it was evident that the day was not going to be great for them from the get-go when the InfoWars Pizzagate goober started screaming and yelling about Donald Trump being innocent and had to be forcibly removed by the Capitol Police.
Committed by the Democrat Party. We're not going to sit here and watch you run an impeachment scam and remove our vote. We voted for Donald Trump, and they're simply removing him because they don't like him. Americans are sick of your impeachment scam. They're sick of the Democrat treason. We know who committed the crimes, and it wasn't Trump. Trump is innocent.
Convincing, huh? I mean, before that bearded child in the ill-fitting suit began ranting like a head-dented sumph, I totally thought that Trump was worthy of impeachment. But now, after his incoherent ramblings, I think I've changed my mind. Well, once the hearings got underway, it consisted of testimony from Intelligence Committee Democrat counsel Dan Goldman and the counsel for the Republicans on the committee, Steve Castor. Now look, at many points throughout the day of these all-day proceedings, I got the distinct feeling that the Republicans were just sandbagging it. Because it seems odd to me that this guy is the best they got, the most talented they could muster. Because Steve Castor is either a hilarious prankster or he's the single worst lawyer who's ever wandered aimlessly throughout the offices of Capitol Hill. Watch him mount his best defense of Donald Trump in this riveting stinger of a legal argument.
To impeach a president who 63 million people voted for over 8 lines in a call transcript is baloney.
So, Steve Castor and the Republicans contend that the number of votes Donald Trump received, which was, for the record, 3 million fewer votes than Hillary Clinton, they contend that those votes somehow render null and void Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States, which gives the House of Representatives the sole power of impeachment. Also, they would have us believe that because Donald Trump's bribery scheme was communicated in the call transcript summary in only like 8 lines, it's apparently not impeachable. My question would be, what if it were 10 lines or 20? How about 2 pages? Would that be impeachable, you dimwit? And what if he solicited murder or some other heinous violent crime inside of 8 lines? Would that be baloney too? Because of the brevity of the scheme's description? And look, it didn't get much better because while he was being asked the most simple fact questions about whether or not Joe Biden could be considered a leading political rival of Donald Trump, he shifted in his chair and squirmed and hemmed and hawed like a kid who just got called up to the chalkboard to finish a math problem he didn't know how to do.
It's relevant to look at evidence bearing on the president's state of mind that may help explain the president's actions.
I think the evidence that we talked about show...
Microphone.
Use your mic, please.
Sir, my only question to you is that a relevant thing to consider?
Right, like the call he had with Senator Johnson.
It's relevant to consider. Sir, would you agree that Joe Biden was a leading Democratic contender to face President Trump in 2020?
I wouldn't agree with that.
You disagree with it. So, sir, it's your testimony
It's too early.
that President Trump did not view President Biden to be a legitimate contender.
I don't
Is that
know what
correct?
President Trump believed or didn't believe, but it's too early.
Sir, as part of your inquiry, did you determine whether President Trump tweeted at all about former Vice President Joe Biden between January and July 25th, and how many times?
I didn't look at Twitter. I try to stay off Twitter lately.
Did you know President Trump tweeted about former Vice President Joe Biden over 25 times between January and July 25th?
No, I didn't look at those tweets.
Did you look at how many times President Trump mentioned Vice President Biden in a speech or rally leading up to the July 25th call?
Hey, President Trump goes to a lot of rallies. He does a lot of tweeting. I think it's pretty difficult to draw too many conclusions from his tweets or his statements at rallies.
This is the best they've got? He can't even find it within himself to explain the inconsistency between the fact that he just testified that Biden isn't really a presidential contender, despite the fact that he's leading in every poll, and the fact that Donald Trump can't stop tweeting about him being one. What a mook. If the stakes weren't so drastically high, I would almost feel bad for the guy. But the real disgusting theme of the day from the Republicans was to deny reality itself. After all of the ranting and raving and tweeting from Donald Trump admonishing America to read the transcript, there certainly isn't any honesty or moral and ethical soundness, for that matter, related to the plain language that is contained therein. Listen to Steve Castor wriggle and twist and deny what anyone with the power of literacy can discover when they read the transcript summary of Donald Trump's call with Ukrainian President Zelensky.
You know, I think you're reading a little too much into, some of the 8 lines. I don't think the president was requesting an investigation into Joe Biden. He just mentions an offhand comment.
Sir, is that a no? It was not U.S. policy to look into Joe Biden?
Yeah, but you're presuming that it then at some point became U.S. policy to investigate Joe Biden, and I don't think that's the case.
So I will play the role of broken record again. Here is the 8 lines of the call transcript summary that Republicans claim isn't direct evidence of Donald Trump asking to get something for something, or quid pro quo. Zelensky says to Trump, "I would also like to thank you for your great support in the area of defense. We are ready to continue to cooperate for the next steps. Specifically, we are almost ready to buy more javelins from the United States for defense purposes." To which Donald Trump replies in his classic dumb guy speak, "I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike, ellipsis. I guess you have one of your wealthy people, ellipsis. The server, they say Ukraine has it. There are a lot of things that went on, the whole situation. I think you're surrounding yourself with some of the same people. I would like to have the Attorney General call you or your people, and I would like you to get to the bottom of it." Now, if you're wondering why you didn't just see the words Joe Biden or Hunter Biden or Burisma, well, that is because this isn't a word-for-word readout of the call. It isn't an actual transcript. It's a transcript summary. Further, as the New York Times writes, in testimony after the White House released this reconstructed transcript, an official on the call told impeachment investigators that the ellipses represented important words or phrases that were deliberately left out. Among the omissions was Mr. Trump raising the existence of recordings of former Vice President Joe Biden and Mr. Zelensky's mentionings of Burisma Holdings, the energy company whose board employed Mr. Biden's son, Hunter. So enough. Enough. Enough with this denial of reality that Donald Trump wasn't trying to get something personal in return for the military aid that Congress had already legally appropriated. Anyway, while Dan Goldman, the Democratic counsel for the House Intel Committee, was an outstanding and intelligent representative of the truth, I just think it was Congressman Eric Swalwell who was the MVP of the day. Because in only a brief series of questions, he brought down the hammer and smashed any Republican narrative that Donald Trump is innocent within the framework of all of this scheming and dealing. Watch this.
During Watergate, the famous phrase from Senator Howard Baker was asked, "What did the president know and when did he know it?" There's a reason that no one here has repeated those questions during these hearings. We know what the president did, and we know when he knew it. Mr. Goldman, who sent Rudy Giuliani to Ukraine to smear Joe Biden?
President Trump.
Who fired the anti-corruption ambassador in Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch?
President Trump.
Who told Ambassador Sondland and Ambassador Volker to work with Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine?
President Trump.
Who told Vice President Pence to not go to President Zelensky's inauguration?
President Trump.
Who ordered his own chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney, to withhold critical military assistance for Ukraine?
President Trump.
Who refused to meet with President Zelensky in the Oval Office?
President Trump.
Who ignored on July 25 his own National Security Council's anti-corruption talking points?
President Trump.
Who asked President Zelensky for a favor?
President Trump.
Who personally asked President Zelensky to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden?
President Trump.
Who stood on the White House lawn and confirmed that he wanted Ukraine to investigate Vice President Biden?
President Trump.
Who stood on that same lawn and said that China should also investigate Vice President Biden?
President Trump.
As to anything that we do not know in this investigation, who has blocked us from knowing it?
President Trump in the White House.
So as it relates to President Trump, is he an incidental player or a central player in this scheme?
President Trump is the central player in this scheme.
There's a reason that no one has said, what did the president know and when did he know it? From the evidence that you have presented, Mr. Goldman, and the Intelligence Committee's findings, we know one thing, and one thing is clear. As it related to this scheme, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, knew everything.
Donald Trump is a treacherous, scheming scumbag who has violated his solemn oath to faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. But what do you expect from a serially bankrupt huckster con artist who had his fake university shut down for fraud and his charitable foundation forcibly shut down for fraud, and who, if Republicans in the Senate can locate their honor, dignity, and conscience, will lose his presidency because of fraud?